Join the team.
Hey, this is the McGuire review, and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new expansion to our Runebound 3rd edition, which is Unbreakable Bonds. Now, today is a special day for me because Runebound is one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game of all time. Now, some of you may say, really? I don't know, it just is. Like, I absolutely love Runebound. I love the 2nd edition. I got almost everything that was available for the 2nd edition. When the 3rd edition came out, there were some things that were changed, and I really liked how they incorporated the 3rd edition of the gameplay. We've already taken a look at the 4 smaller box expansions that have come out so far for the 3rd edition, and today we're going to be taking a look at their first big box expansion, Unbreakable Bonds. Now you can see just how much stuff is included in this particular expansion versus the other ones we've taken a look at already. So if you are curious in the other ones that have come out so far from the 3rd edition, you can go and check those out on the channel. I do have a video on each one of those. But for Unbreakable Bonds, look at how much stuff we get. So let's just start with the rule book here, and we'll go through and we'll look at everything that we got included in this expansion, some of the new stuff that we're going to see, particular with this one. There's 2 big special new things. You've got cooperative play as well as solo play that's integrated into this expansion, which does dramatically change the base gameplay of the game, which is pretty awesome. So if you were in the camp of maybe not liking Runebound from the perspective of there isn't a lot of player interaction in the base game and you're playing from more of a competitive perspective, some people like that, some people do not. This expansion does dramatically change that in making a lot of player interaction when you get into forming parties. We'll talk about that and various other things. So I would challenge, if you did kind of fall into that camp of maybe not liking Runebound, particularly from a competitive perspective, I think you're really going to like it. If you like these types of games, buy the addition of the solo rules as well as the cooperative gameplay. So definitely give this another chance if this is not a title for you because of the way the gameplay has worked in the past. This expansion does very much change that and gives you a lot more gameplay options. So I'm loving this title right now in this edition. With this new expansion, it really does add a lot more to the game that I think was missing, and it makes it a very good experience, a really rich experience, specifically with a party. So let's take a look at our rule book here, and the rule book's going to follow the same as we would have seen in any of these types of rule books. You know, you're going to have a nice color layout. It's going to list off all your new components that are there, and it is a very short rule book. Even with as much stuff that's here, that is pretty much it. Just that one page there I flicked. There is an example, nice example of combat here on the back, which does go through some of our new combat sheets here. The game is going to have to take somewhat of an AI approach with the enemies now because it's a cooperative game, and other players are not going to be casting those combat tokens like you would in the competitive version of the game. That is going to be controlled by our new AI combat sheets here, which I think they did a nice job with. I was a little bit worried about is your opponents. So, you know, if I was playing that and Bear was playing here, Bear would be shaking those combat tokens and making the decisions as he was sort of battling me as the enemy. And, you know, Bear usually tries to really stick it to me, so that would be pretty difficult. So I thought, you know, when looking at these sheets here, I wonder if this is going to offer the same type of experience where you would still get, you know, a good AI interaction, and it would still be as difficult as it would be playing, you know, against another player around the table. And I think they did a really nice job implementing these and how they actually work, and we'll talk more about those. So let's kind of go around the table here and look at some of our components, and we will start right up front here with the 2 new characters. So there are 2 brand new characters that are included in this expansion. You will see their miniatures here, which I think these miniatures are awesome. They did a great job with these particular characters. And their names are Tatiana right down here with the bow and arrow and kind of a dagger. She is really cool. She's got 3 combat chips you can see, which, you know, in any of these expansions that do come with new characters, they're going to have their 3 base combat chips there. And then you have another new character here, which is Ilium, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he has got like 2 daggers sort of flying through the air very quickly, kind of running, and that's a great sculpt as well. I think they did a really good job with these 2 particular sculpts and these characters. So you can see those there. And then the next thing you might notice is these little tokens right here. And this is a new mechanic which is going to allow you to save actions. So in any other prior version of the game, you would have so many actions available on your turn. You would use those. If you didn't use them all, just kind of waste them and you'd go to the next player. What this allows you to do is actually save one of those actions. Now, you can't ever continue to stack those up, so you can't go turn to turn and say, oh, I'm going to save another one, and I had one from the last turn. You can't do that. You can only save up to one of these. But what makes that nice is on a future turn, you'll be able to have an extra action that you can use against an enemy or whatever. So it allows you to kind of plan and add some strategy into go forward turns. So that is a new mechanic for this, and I like that as well. You know, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, does that kind of make the game easier? I guess you can look at it and say that it does, but anytime you have a cooperative style game, it always adds an increased difficulty to the game generally. And I do find that the game is a little bit more difficult now that it is a cooperative game and some of the other rules and cards that they've incorporated into the game. So I think that this does give you a nice balance, and it also allows you to, as a party cooperatively, to strategically plan for future turns. So I really like the component that they added in with that. So that's all of our character and our character actions here. Let's just go right around the table this way. So in moving down, here are the two new main scenarios in the game, and those are right here on the back of the rule book. There are a few others we'll talk about. So we do have the Red Death, which our deck of cards for that is right here, and the Locust Swarm, which our deck of cards for that is right here. So again, anytime you play this game and you do pick a scenario, there is a deck of cards that will go with that particular scenario to give you that overarching feel as you're playing the game. So lots of replayability in Runebound, as you know, within the 3rd edition, as they come out with each one of these expansions. Every one of them comes with its own theme to the game. So that's a ton of replayability. You don't just have all the different characters now that are available, you also have each one of these themes that you can play and go through. Now what you'll find down here is the main card for those themes. Here are the two right here for the Red Death and the Locust Swarm. And then the three that you'll see here, and I'll set this one aside, we'll talk about that here in a second. We do have the Margoth and the Corpse King here, which are the two main parts of the first base 3rd edition. So they did give you those cards to make it possible to play the solo and cooperative versions of the game with those base ones. And then they did add another little special, Caught in the Web. So now this is one of the expansions that we have reviewed in the past, and they did add another card specifically for Caught in the Web, so you can play that expansion and theme with the new cooperative rules. And there is a new little token that's included for the Spider Queen area there as well. That's all of the things that we're going to be needing to do some of our scenarios as we play the game. Obviously, you've got your adventure cards here. There are 3 different types of adventure card decks that you'll find. For this particular expansion, you get quite a few new cards. I believe it's 60 new adventure cards that are included. Let's double check that here in the rules. Yes, 60, I was right. There's 60 new cards that are included. So you do get quite a bit of new adventure cards to add in and use for this expansion. Right up top here, we have our skills. Now, I'm going to reference our book here again to make sure I get all the names right. But obviously, as you build a game and you set up a game, you're allowed to use 6 different skill sets. And there are 3 new ones that are included in this game. And those 3 new ones here are the Battle Pilgrim, which is right here. It's got like a little dove symbol. And there's one that's got sort of a blossoming, I want to say kind of a blossoming flower type symbol. It's called One with the Land. And then a little money bag that's called High Society. So you do have 3 different types of new skills that are included in the game, as well as this new special one right here that's called Party Skills. Now, that's a new concept in this one that I think is really cool. So obviously, as you play this game, and it's a cooperative game now, so you're playing with other players, you're allowed to, you know, meet on the same hex, and you can trade various things, 1 gold or 1 skill that's in your hand, not played, a rumor, a quest. There's various things you can do. There's only one of those that you can trade with another player if you get on the same hex. There's a new concept called forming parties. So if there are multiple players that get on the same hex, you can do 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, whatever makes sense. You can form a party, and now when you roll and you move, the whole party kind of moves together, interacts together, fights together. And these blue skills here are particularly called party skills. So as you get into a party, anybody can contribute to these skills here, and you kind of put it out in the middle of the table, and they stay in play for the rest of the game. So if the party is disbanded, those skills do stay out and stay available. As parties join together again, they then become available again. But they are only available to players if the players are in parties. Remember that if you do get these available and out there in front of you, and then you disband from a party, someone, it's a party of two and someone gets knocked out, you just decide to leave. Make sure you're thinking through those party skills that are on the board, because they may not be available to you on that next round if you're not still in that party. So those are the new party skills. I really like that new mechanic that they added in. So let's go now and look at our combat boards here. And what I'm going to do is, as we look at these, I'm going to jump right up here to this component, because there are a few different types of enemies that are included in this particular expansion. Now, there is 4 of them. The 4th one is called the Warrior, and that is the brown board right here. And you would use the tokens from the base game for that. But for this expansion, there are 3 new ones. And that is the dark purple is the Mystic. The red here is the Savage. And the green here is the Trickster. And those are a little bit different, like any enemy would. They do have their own feel to them. I do like that they added in different variations of enemy types as you do run into those enemies and do combat with them over the course of the game. And to indicate right on the card, like this one says, Warrior, Humanoid, we got a Savage Humanoid, Mystic, and there's various different types of enemies that you'll run into. And it calls those out right on the cards. So I like that even now when you run into an enemy, it isn't just like you're running into the same type of enemy, you're running into different classes of enemies, which is really nice. I think it adds a nice flavor here to the game, adds a little bit more to it, makes it a little bit more robust. So let's look at one of these cards here. I'm just going to take the Trickster. When you go into combat, and let's say you're fighting a Trickster, you're going to use the green tokens here. And you're gonna have either yourself or somebody else can go ahead and cast those tokens for you, and you can put those tokens right on the board. So you're gonna, however they fall, you're gonna lay them on the board just right with the symbols that are shown. And then you're gonna handle initiative the same way. Whoever has the most of these, the yellow symbol that's face up, so you're gonna handle that initiative the same way. Being a tie, the adventurer is gonna go first. And what's going to happen is you're going to take your turn, and then when it's the enemy's turn, they're going to go from top to bottom right down through these skills. So the first thing they're going to do is if there's any tokens that are on this, they're going to do. The next round, if there's any tokens that are here, they're going to do. Now, if you ever run into something where it doesn't make sense, or there's just no way to really kind of use the next round, whatever line you're on, you would then go to the next one, and then upon the next turn, you would check and see if that's possible for you to use the one that you skipped. Each one of these also has a little action here that's at the top, so something special for that particular class. Trickster here says you have +1 to initiative. So that's going to activate first when it is the enemy's turn there. And each one of them is a little bit different. So the Savage, when you engage your foe in combat, deal 1 damage. Mystic, if there are any lightning in your pool at the end of the combat round, deal 1 damage. And the Warrior just says no additional effect. And that's how these combat boards are going to work. It's very easy. There are a few different things on the boards where you'll see maybe like a little +1. There are no tokens in that area, and you do see symbols or an indication on any of these boards +1. You can't do that. It isn't like it's just a free hit. It's only going to activate if there's 1 or more tokens already on that line. So these boards are very easy to use. They're very intuitive. You just roll, you cast, you put your tokens right where it matches up, and you go from top to bottom and just execute each round. That's how that's going to work. It's very simple. The next thing we're going to see here are these little cards, and these are new cards called twist cards. So they're going to be shuffled into your asset deck that you're going to use for your cities. And when any of these twist cards are pulled, there's going to be something that's going to happen, and you're going to execute that, then you're going to discard it, and you're going to, you'll flip another card. You can almost think of them as somewhat like little event cards along the way that might be happening when you're interacting with the asset deck. So just for instance, I'll read one of these really quick. I just grabbed one here off the top. This twist is actually called Price Reduction. And this says fancy wares are coming in from afar, so it's out with the old. Attach this card to the highest priced asset in the market. Attached assets cost 2 less for the rest of the game. So this one here, you can just take and throw it on something, and that type of asset is 2 less for the rest of the game, which is pretty awesome. So, some of these twists really benefit you. This one's a sale. This one's secret wares. You're invited to the back room of the shop. You may become delayed. Add 3 extra assets to the market for a total of 7 options. Gossip, pickpocket. So all of these things are really cool little twists that add to the game, and I would say that pretty much most of them benefit you. I haven't read every one of them because I don't want to spoil it for myself as well as for everybody else, but most of these do give you a benefit throughout the game. Here's some new heart tokens, some 5 heart tokens. They do add that. You've obviously got your story tracker tokens here that are included. This is a new mechanic as well, the envelopes, and this is going to be used in a cooperative version only. You're not going to use these in the solo setup. The solo setup is going to be almost identical as the cooperative setup, outside of a couple different rules. 1, you won't use the envelopes, and 2, on a solo game, you don't use the party skills, and you also will not use any card that will reference another player. So if you were to draw one of those, you would just discard and draw again. But these envelopes is kind of a cool way to get materials from one character to another. So again, I mentioned a little bit earlier that if you do meet on the same hex, you can trade on that hex. And if you are not on the same hex, let's say you're kind of far away from the another player that you might want to give, they need 1 gold, they need 1 type of skill you might have in your hand, something that they need, and you're nowhere near one another. But let's say you're near cities. That's where these envelopes come into play. So if there are envelopes available, okay, so if they're already out and they're being used, you can't do that, but there are 3 included, and if there are envelopes available, it says place 1 gold, 1 skill from your hand, 1 quest, or 1 rumor on this card and deliver it to any hero. Send or receive envelopes in any city or town. So let's say I got to a city and I wanted to give a particular skill that I had to another character, and this skill was still in my hand. I could put that on this card, and I can now give that to another player. Now that player can't use that until they get to another city or a town. But let's say on the next turn that player was able to roll, get the proper terrain dice, and was able to make it to a town on that next turn. They then could say, oh, the pigeon delivered the envelope, or the mailman delivered the envelope, however you want to come up with that. They got the envelope from one city to that town, and now I've delivered to you one of these different types of things. So that's a cool little mechanic that I also like as well, that I thought was pretty fun, and it's just another way to be able to share supplies as you're on the board with other players, now that it is a cooperative game if you're using this expansion. So that's how our envelopes work. And then right up here, you obviously have a nice little bucket of new items that are included in the game. We do have the red, the blue, the green, and even the yellow. And each one of those mean a little bit different type of item. You'll know that from the base game if you've played the base game, and all the cards that go along with that. So I will say there are some really cool items. The Farmer's Cart, Book of Stars, Thief's Vest, Baron's Cloak. We've got a few different other things here. Master Spy, Headhunter, Elven Boots. These are our boots that are right here. So there's quite a few new items that are included in the game for this expansion, and I really like it whenever they do that. So I'm a big fan when they release these expansions that are like, here's a ton more items and a ton more cool stuff that you can add into the game to acquire. I think that's really fun from an adventuring perspective when you have a lot of different items. And if you look at what's included here, as well as the items and the new stuff that's been included in the smaller box expansions they've done so far, you do have quite a bit more stuff that's now included outside of the base game if you just have the base game. So I think they're doing a fantastic job continuing to build out this platform for this particular run or version of the game, the 3rd edition. If you don't have it, I highly recommend going out and picking it up, especially if you like these adventure type games. For me, it's such a great experience. I have so much fun with this game every time I play, and now that it has the cooperative and the solo rules, it's even better. I mean, they really have locked it in for me. I absolutely love this game. I definitely recommend it. Now, one thing here that I will call out, they do include the nice little baggies to put everything back in a baggie so it's not all just loose shaking around in the box. So far, and I haven't I've had this out playing it, but I haven't tried to fit everything in here yet. I do have all the rest of the expansions that have come out so far actually fit into the base game. I think I can fit this into the base game as well, into this box. We'll see. I've been pretty creative on how to get things back in here, but I do believe I can get everything that's been released so far fitting and back into this base box. That way, if I want to go and I want to travel with it, I just take the base box and I got everything that I need. One more thing that I will call out, and it doesn't do this, hint, hint, Fantasy Flight, just giving you some thoughts here. But on the back of these cards, they did some fantastic artwork that represent sort of a kind of a sepia sort of look of the board, the actual base board. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, I wonder if each one of them is different, and they all just kind of go together and make like a picture. They're not. They all have the same artwork on the back, but how cool would it be if they continue to release these types of cards and they added in a way where, you know, you could put these together and form another section of the board and then have that sitting next to the main board game, and it would be a way to kind of expand off of the main board game onto another board game. Kind of like how they do with Talisman, you know, where you can add on another sections of the board game to kind of do your epic versions of Talisman and kind of venture off the main board game onto another board. I thought that would be so cool. And when I first saw this, it was like, oh, did they do that? You know, and I guess you can get some of these to kind of match up if you put them in certain kind of a certain way. But again, I don't think this is meant to do that at all. It was just something that kind of caught my eye, and I thought, man, that would be awesome if they did that with an expansion out into the future. So, you know, just kind of a hint there, a little thought for Fantasy Flight, just a little way to innovate and get a little creative with some of this stuff that you could potentially do that, and that would be pretty awesome. So that is the run through of Unbreakable Bonds here. Again, this one is one that always gets me excited because I love me some Runebound. This is by far one of my favorite games. It's absolutely in the top 3. It's so hard to call that absolute favorite game. Whenever someone asks me, hey, what's your favorite game? Runebound is the one that always comes to mind, and I generally will say Runebound, maybe with a couple other ones, because you know, in today's day and age, it's so difficult to say, this is my one absolute favorite game. But, you know, Runebound is the one that always comes to mind. For me, I've just got a special place in my heart for Runebound. And these additions with these expansions just keep making it a better and better playable experience. And lots of fun. So that's Runebound Unbreakable Bonds. The rest of the expansions that have come out so far are on the channel. If you are interested, check these out. Again, if Runebound has not been your thing, I think you're going to find that this expansion right here is going to change that. Get out there and take a look. Check it out. I don't think you're going to be sorry with picking up this one. So hit that like, click the subscribe below to join the team, ring the bell. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.